Alright, we are back with yet another interview with Naoki Hamaguchi. This time he talks about the philosophy behind how they're building Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 and what they want it to represent. He also talks about the process of porting Remake and Rebirth to the Switch 2 and Xbox, and he also reflects on his 10+ year journey on the 7 Remake project. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here and you'd like to stick around, you can subscribe. It is always appreciated. Alright, so today's interview comes to us from Brandon Zachary of comicbook.com. And we start off first with them asking Hamaguchi about the process of bringing Rebirth to the Switch 2 and the Xbox series of platforms, and was that something that they had in mind during development of the game on PS5? And Hamaguchi's answer, very interesting. He would go on to say, "We didn't have specific platforms in mind at the start of development. That said, in recent years, gaming has moved beyond a single environment, and it's become standard for players to choose how and where they play based on their individual lifestyles. We felt the game wouldn't hold up if we were to ignore that assumption on the content side. The 7 Remake series has always been driven by the goal of delivering this story properly to as many players as possible. Because of that, since the relatively early stages of development, we began asking ourselves what format would allow us to realize the same experience, even across different platforms. It didn't feel like the decision to port the game to the Switch 2 and Xbox Series X/S were made later or abruptly. Rather, they feel like a natural outcome we settled on as a result of continuing to refine our thinking around how to respond to evolving playstyles while building on the experience we gained from Remake." So that one's interesting to me because we still don't know the ins and outs and all of the full details of what exactly went on with Sony and Square Enix when it came to 7 Remake's project being exclusive, because it started off as a timed thing, and then somewhere along the way something changed and it just stayed on PlayStation. It would go to PC, but seemingly Nintendo consoles, Xbox was out of the question until 10 years later when suddenly Square Enix is announcing, hey, 7 Remake, Rebirth, and Part 3 are going multi-platform. So when he says they didn't have specific platforms in mind at the beginning of development, I'm curious to know if he's talking about Remake or Rebirth, because it would make sense that they wouldn't even consider other platforms if they were locked into a deal with Sony. And I'm curious to know when they found out that, hey, you're not exclusive anymore, you guys can start making for Switch 2 and Xbox. Because like I've said before, if you're a third-party company, you gotta be multi-platform. It's the best way to ensure that millions upon millions of more people reach your game, and it just helps the longevity and health of the games in the company further down the line. And again, I will point to the golden goose of the gaming industry, Capcom. They were in a very similar situation many, many moons ago where they were in trouble. No one knew what was gonna happen, but then they rebounded. And you look at where they are now, they got games coming out seemingly like every year, every 2 years, and they're all really high quality, well built, well developed, and they're multi-platform. A game like Resident Evil Requiem has sold over 6 million units since its launch, and what's interesting about that game specifically is that according to the developers, that game is selling evenly everywhere. It's not like it's just doing gangbusters in America and Japan. It's like every region that game is available in, it's selling very well. You got Pragmata, which just came out, a brand new IP, which has sold over 1 million units in just 2 days. That game is phenomenal, by the way. Another potential Game of the Year contender. And then later on this year, they've got Onimusha, Way of the Sword, which I'm incredibly excited for. And based on their track record, Onimusha will probably do well too. So Square's really been trying to find their footing. They've brought in Takashi Kiryu, which, he's made some questionable decisions in regards to AI, but his philosophy seemingly of multi-platform, we gotta push that, we gotta be on everything at all times, is a really smart move. And it's nice to see them moving into that direction with the Remake trilogy especially, but in the future with the next mainline Final Fantasy perhaps. So, interesting answer from Hamaguchi. Maybe one day there will be some sort of huge documentary that will really kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how the Remake project started, all the trials and tribulations, the backdoor shady deals with Sony. I want to know all of it. Up next, we get to Remake Part 3, where Brandon asks Hamaguchi what lessons have they learned from Remake and Rebirth that could impact Remake Part 3. Hamaguchi goes on to say, across the entire Remake project, the guiding philosophy has been to progressively expand the scale of the gameplay experience with each entry, rather than repeat the same experience. 7 Remake established an experience centered on engaging deeply with the story and characters, while Rebirth moved toward an even more expansive experience that includes the world map. This series isn't about rehashing the same gameplay just because it's a remake. I consider this project where we've pushed ourselves to ask, how much further can we expand the experience with each new entry? For the third installment, we're not thinking about simply wrapping up everything we've built until this point. Rather, we're focused on how the full scale of the series we've been aiming for could ultimately be realized as a complete experience. That way of thinking is deeply reflected in our current development process. I think you could also look forward to the Highwind, which I know many people are curious about. He then laughs. So that is really nice to hear out loud. It's something that we've all just kind of been speculating on as content creators, but I would imagine Part 3, again, is the culmination of everything that they've learned with Remake and Rebirth. You take the best of Remake, the best of Rebirth, and find a way to mix it into what they have with Part 3, and now you have this full complete experience that will have linear sections, that will have bigger expanded open world stuff. But now you could probably run from point A to point B in this version of the game. And I really appreciate how they want each game to feel different. Remake is very different from Rebirth, and Part 3 is going to be a very different gameplay experience as well. And instead of just doing sequel upon sequel upon sequel, where it's just kind of the same thing, it's really exciting as a fan to know we're going to get a different experience with each game. That's why I hope and I feel Part 3 will probably be the best of the trilogy, because it's going to be everything that they've learned up until this point. The good, the bad, all of the lessons they've learned with writing the characters, how they pace out the story, how combat works, how mini-games are integrated, will all come to a head in this game. And again, it's their final game in the trilogy. There ain't no Part 4. This is your last shot to really show people what you've learned and impress them and hopefully stick the landing. And I think that's what makes the lead up to this one so exciting, because now everything that they've been trying to do will be that complete experience, as Hamaguchi says in the interview, which is just, man, that first trailer, whenever we get it, it's gonna be something. The info dumps and learning about the game until it comes out, the inevitable Tokyo Game Show, gameplay deep dive that we'll probably end up doing on the channel is just, it's so exciting to think about everything, because again, it's the culmination of everything that they've worked on. And what's super cool is that everything that they've learned with this remake trilogy, I'm sure will apply to future, not just Final Fantasy games, but future Square Enix games too. So aside from the stuff we expect in Part 3, the best of Remake, the best of Rebirth, I'm very excited to see all of the new stuff, because there's probably going to be a lot of it in terms of the story, the character interactions, the gameplay, exploration, vehicles, changing the chocobo, the weapon battles. There's so much they have to do in this game, so much that's going to be new, and it's just so exciting to think about. So at the end of the day, I think Part 3, that will represent what this entire trilogy is, what they've been aiming for, and what I think Final Fantasy could be moving into the future. Now up next, they ask for more details on Part 3, and of course Hamaguchi can't really say much, so he just repeats what he normally says. I can't share any concrete details at this time. Development is proceeding on time and on schedule, which is always nice to hear. There's no bumps in the road there. But he does continue by saying, we believe it'll become a title we can deliver with confidence as the culmination of the trilogy. There's that word again, the culmination. We know many fans are eagerly waiting, and preparations toward the announcement are steadily underway. Please look forward to it just a little longer. All of us are looking towards Summer Game Fest. That makes the most sense. You start off in June. Each game, specifically leading up to this point, Remake and Rebirth, had like 8 to 10 months of marketing. So if Remake can come out, Remake Part 3 that is, can come out early 2027. And again, when I say early, I'm pretty much in the ballpark of the first half of 2026. I don't know if it'll be a January release. That might be a little too early, but I think winter 26 into 27 makes the most sense. So maybe by April, but essentially in the first half of 2027, I think is when this game will eventually release. Because you need time for marketing. You need that Summer Game Fest spot. You need Tokyo Game Show. You got the Game Awards. That's not even counting, if they choose to do other presentations that we're not even thinking of. That's dropping trailers as well, doing interviews, cast interviews, panels. There's so much going into the lead up of this game just being revealed that it's almost overwhelming. And I know Hamaguchi is just ready to let loose and tell all of us what they have. The guy's been teasing as much as he can for years now on what they've been working on, and he looks genuinely excited. Yoshinori Kitase seems to be reinvigorated as well. He's very impressed with what the team has come up with. So they got a big shoes to fill and a lot to live up to, but I think they can do it. Up next, Hamaguchi reflects on his 10-year journey with the remake project, where Brandon asks him about were there any surprises in this very long development cycle, and what has surprised him the most. Hamaguchi says, spending more than a decade working on the same AAA title is an extremely rare experience for a developer. Even now, I'm taken aback to know that more than 10 years have passed without me realizing it since I first began working on the remake series. At the same time, now that the end of the trilogy is clearly in sight, I feel a strong sense that we'll be able to deliver this final installment with confidence. I'm also struck by the fact that even after dedicating over a decade of my career to this project, I feel no negativity about that time at all. I simply feel a renewed sense of gratitude toward Final Fantasy VII for giving me the opportunity to work on something truly worthy of this level of time and commitment. That's really nice to hear. I think it could be super easy to work on a project this size for this long and reach the end of it and be like, I'd want nothing more to do with Final Fantasy, no more Final Fantasy VII, and be super jaded and hate that you spent those 10 plus years working on the same thing instead of doing other things. Because Hamaguchi probably, could have said no to being on this project and could have been working on other Square Enix games in that 10 plus year cycle. But he decided, no, we're going to do this. I'm part of the team. I'm going to lead Rebirth and Part 3. And to not have any ill will, I'm sure he's had bad days, negative days. He's talked about how he sometimes spends more time with Cloud than his own family because they're so busy over there making these games. But for him to be able to step back and be like, man, this is Final Fantasy VII. I got to work on one of the greatest RPGs of all time, one of the greatest video games of all time in the form of a remake trilogy, which again is super rare. I don't think you'll ever see anything like this ever again, not at Square Enix, not at any other companies. It's just too big of a undertaking to do in terms of time and money, and can you keep your same team together in the changing conditions of the gaming industry. And I imagine now that they're approaching the home stretch of development with Part 3, that probably gives him that second wind of, all right, we're almost done. Now we get to actually share it with people, and getting that energy from fans and people that interview them, and that renewed sense of inspiration has got to be pretty invigorating. So for him to still appreciate that time that he spent and not be bitter towards it, it's pretty unique. It's also refreshing to hear. You see a lot of jaded developers within the industry, a lot of jaded film directors and actors, musicians, people that regret, certain projects they worked on or felt like it was a waste of time. But for this one, it's truly meaningful to him, and it's something that I think is probably incredibly invaluable from an experience of not just being a developer, but eventually being a director, which has, given him such an amazing resume. To be like, yeah, I directed Rebirth and now Part 3. So I'm very excited to see what he and CS1 do moving into the future. What's their next game going to be? So with that being said, that is the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of Hamaguchi's words in today's interview. And to leave a question for you guys, I will ask, granted, we don't know much about Part 3 just yet, but what new for Part 3? What new gameplay mechanic or new story aspect or character stuff or exploration thing? What new piece of content are you most excited for in Remake Part 3? For me, one of the ones I keep thinking about are those weapon battles. It's such a huge undertaking. I don't know how you get it to work and feel fun and unique, while also staying true to what the weapons are. That's just going to be really exciting to see. Let me know in the comments down below. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.